The Constitution of India, Preamble. We, the people of India, having solemnly resolved to constitute India into a sovereign, socialist, secular, democratic republic and to secure to all its citizens justice, social, economic and political, liberty of thought, expression, belief, faith and worship, equality of status and of opportunity, and to promote among them all fraternity, assuring the dignity of the individual and the unity and integrity of the nation. In our Constituent Assembly, this 26th day of November 1949, do hereby adopt, enact and give to ourselves this Constitution.
Hi children, our life is in our own hand. Whatever life we want to have, it is up to ourselves to work hard and to achieve it. It is not a small task, but its rewards are very great. I am happy to inform you that most of you, especially girls as well as few boys, are on the track and they are regular in their activities as you people are sending notes to me. But there are few children, especially boys, I don't want to take their names, they are still not on the track, and I want to say to these children that, my dear children, if you will not work hard now, surely you will be facing many problems and the reward which you will be achieving that time, it will not be great. My dear children, I am going to take new chapter, that is chapter 7, ecosystem, and after finishing this chapter, I will be moving on to 6th chapter. So, I am going to move on to the next session with a new chapter, that is chapter 7, ecosystem. We already know what is an ecosystem as we understood about it in our previous classes, or we can say in our lower classes. So, related to ecosystem we are going to study in this chapter. An ecosystem is the basic functional ecological unit in which living organisms interact among themselves and their surrounding environment. So, what is an ecosystem? It is a basic functional as well as ecological unit, and in this unit the living organism, they will be interacting with each other as well as they will be interacting with their surroundings too. Professor Eugene P. Odum is considered as the father of ecosystem ecology. The term ecosystem was introduced by Sir Arthur Tansley in 1935. Now, classification of ecosystem. Ecosystem is classified into two. One is natural ecosystem, number 2 is artificial ecosystem. Natural ecosystem is again divided into two: terrestrial ecosystem and aquatic ecosystem. Terrestrial ecosystem examples are forest, deserts, etc. Aquatic ecosystem again is classified into two: freshwater ecosystem and salt water ecosystem. Example of freshwater ecosystem are pond, lake, river, etc. Saltwater ecosystem examples are marine ecosystem, etc. And in the case of artificial ecosystem, from the name itself we can say it is man-made ecosystem. Example, dam, cropland, aquarium, etc. So, my dear children, I think you would have understood about the classification of ecosystem. Once again, I will just do the recap, that is ecosystem, it is of two types, natural ecosystem and artificial ecosystem. Natural ecosystem is of two types, terrestrial ecosystem and aquatic ecosystem. Example of terrestrial ecosystems are forests, deserts, etc. Aquatic ecosystem again is classified or divided into two, freshwater ecosystem and saltwater ecosystem. Examples of freshwater ecosystem are pond, lake, river, etc. And the example of saltwater ecosystem is marine ecosystem. And the second ecosystem is artificial ecosystem, which is man-made. And the example of artificial ecosystems are dam, cropland, aquarium, etc. Now, ecosystem structure and function. Ecosystem consists of biotic and abiotic components and their interactions. Already just now I told you ecosystem, it is a basic functional and ecological unit where the organisms, they are interacting with each other with their surrounding. So, it consists of biotic and abiotic components, isn't it? Next one, the flow of energy takes place within these components of the ecosystem. The components are biotic and abiotic components, and within these components the flow of energy is taking place in an ecosystem. Structure of ecosystem. We are going to study structure and function in that. Number one, structure of ecosystem. An ecosystem has two structural features. Number one, species composition, and number two, stratification. The structure of an ecosystem, it is having two structural features, A, species composition, and B, stratification. So, we can see what is species composition. An ecosystem has different types of plants and animal species. We know that, for example, if you are taking pond ecosystem, when we are going to the pond, we can see water is there, which is abiotic component, soil is present there, it is abiotic component, and with this water and soil we can see plants as well as fish, other organisms in the pond, and so it is constituting an ecosystem, isn't it? So, here it has been said that an ecosystem has different types of plants and animal species. These plants and animals in an ecosystem are called species composition. So, the plants and animal present, that is different types of plants and animals, those are present in an ecosystem constituting the species composition. That is about species composition, which is a structural part of ecosystem. Number 2 or B part is stratification. Vertical distribution of different species occupying different levels is called stratification. So, what is stratification? It is the distribution of different species, and it will be in vertical form, and they will be occupying different layers or levels. That is called stratification. Example, top trees form the canopy of a forest. In the forest ecosystem, we can see herbs are there, shrubs are there, middle level plants will be there, and the top level plants will be there. So, this is forming a vertical strata there. So, different layers we can see of the plants, and that is the stratification, or we can say the distribution of different species vertically. Now, you can see here figures related to species composition and stratification. This is the ecosystem where we can see species composition, isn't it? Different plants and different animals are present here. So, this is constituting the species composition in an ecosystem, and this is related to stratification, where you can see forest floor. In the forest, when we move, we can see this is the base part where herbs are present there, and then above to that understory layer. This is understory layer where a little bit more height plants are there, and then next is canopy layer. This is canopy, isn't it? And then the emergent layer. So in this manner we can see stratification of different species which is been occupying different layers in an ecosystem. So that is about species composition and stratification, which is forming the structural part of an ecosystem. Now next is components of ecosystem. Already we know that biotic component which is living and abiotic components which are non-living. Biotic component is divided into three groups: producers, which are also known as autotrophs, especially green plants will be coming as producers; consumers and decomposers. In consumers, example is human beings. Now producers are again divided into two groups: photoautotrophs and chemoautotrophs. Already these terms we have studied in our previous classes. Photoautotrophs, we know that these are the green plants which are preparing their own food by using the sunlight. Chemoautotrophs are the organisms which are preparing their own food by using chemicals. Example, blue-green bacteria, or we can say the bacteria, cyanobacteria are there, isn't it? They will be preparing the food related to chemoautotrophs. They are called chemoautotrophs. Now consumers are divided into three groups: primary consumers, which are herbivores. These herbivores will be feeding on green plants. Secondary consumers, which are carnivores. Here we can take the example of cow, isn't it, human being, etc. Tertiary consumers, here again we can take the example of human beings. Next is abiotic components. So this is biotic component. Now abiotic components are air, water, soil, temperature, solar radiations. All these are abiotic components. Now you can see here figures related to biotic and abiotic components. This is biotic component, isn't it? It's a grassland ecosystem showing component parts. You can see all these are living things. So they are biotic components, and here you can see abiotic components. These are non-living components of the ecosystem, where you can see wind, sunlight, soil, temperature, atmosphere, water. All these are constituting the abiotic components. So this is related to biotic and abiotic components. So here we are finishing with the structural unit of ecosystem. Now we are moving on to the functions of ecosystem, isn't it? Here number 1 is productivity, number 2 decomposition, 3 energy flow, 4 nutrient cycle. So these are the 4 functions of an ecosystem: productivity, decomposition, energy flow, nutrient cycle. Now we are going to study in deep related to each functions of an ecosystem. Number 1, productivity. The rate of biomass or organic matter produced during a given period of time is called productivity. So what is productivity? It is the production of biomass in a given period of time by the green plants, isn't it? That is productivity. Now productivity is of two types: primary productivity and secondary productivity. Primary productivity, it is a rate of biomass production per unit area over a period of time by plant during photosynthesis, is called primary productivity. So what is primary productivity? It is the biomass which is produced there at a period of time in a given area by the process called photosynthesis, is called primary productivity, and it is expressed in the terms of weight or energy. Now primary productivity is of two types: gross primary productivity and net primary productivity. Gross primary productivity is also known as GPP, that is the rate of total production of organic matter by photosynthesis done by the plant is gross primary productivity. Same definition which we have seen just now for the primary productivity as well as the productivity. It has been said that the total production of the organic matter, its rate during photosynthesis is called the gross primary productivity. That is the total production of the organic matter which is being taking place there. Its rate will be determined and that is called gross primary productivity. It is measured as an increase in the biomass. How it is measured? When the biomass increases, surely we can say the gross primary productivity will be measured there, isn't it? Now, number 2 is net primary productivity, which is also known as NPP. The balance energy or biomass remaining after meeting the cost of respiration of producers is called net primary productivity. So, what is net primary productivity? It is the balance energy which is remaining there after meeting the cost of respiration by the producers. When the producers, they will be producing the biomass, after the respiratory process what biomass is remaining there, that is the net primary productivity. And net primary productivity can be defined as gross productivity by respiration rate, that is NPP is equal to GPP, gross primary productivity minus respiration. So, when GPP is being minus by respiration, surely NPP will be getting. So, this is how, this is the mathematical expression of net primary productivity. So, I think my dear children, you would have understood about gross primary productivity and net primary productivity. It is again important. Now, number 2 is secondary. So, till now we have studied about the primary productivity, isn't it? Now, we are going to learn and understand about secondary productivity. It is defined as the rate of formation of new organic matter by consumers. Primary productivity was related to plants. Now, secondary productivity is related to consumers. It has been said that the rate of formation of new organic matter, that is by consumer, is secondary productivity, and it reflects on the utilization of food produced by the producers for the production of consumers' biomass. So, what it has been saying? The utilization of the food which was produced by the producer by the consumer is secondary productivity. How much food is being utilized there for the production of biomass in the consumer is the secondary productivity. Factors affecting primary productivity. There are certain factors which are affecting the primary productivity, or we can say primary productivity depends on certain factors, and they are input of solar energy, that is how much solar energy is being provided there or how much solar energy is being trapped there by the green plants, the productivity will be increasing. Next one, plant species inhabiting in an area. The plant species, the area is also becoming a factor for the productivity, isn't it? And in that area, the plant species, whether they are there or not, that is also depending for the primary productivity. Next one, photosynthetic capacity of the plant. This is very, very important. If the plant is having very less photosynthetic capacity, surely the productivity will be less. And if the plant is showing higher rate of productivity, or we can say photosynthetic rate, surely the higher will be the productivity. Next is the environmental factors. Surely this is very, very important again. Certain environmental factors are there which is needed there for the productivity to be increased. Example, sunlight itself. And next one is availability of nutrients. Certain nutrients which are needed there for the plant for its production, if it is not available, surely the primary productivity will be decreasing. Sure. So, the availability of nutrients are again becoming the factors which will be affecting the primary productivity. Isn't it, my dear children? So, this is about the factors affecting primary productivity again, which is very, very important. Now, we know that in the terrestrial area, primary production will be very high, isn't it? Because they are getting the direct sunlight and they will be able to produce the biomass in a high rate. But what happened to the primary productivity of the ocean? It has been said that it is very low, and the primary reason is light, isn't it? Already we said that the factors affecting primary productivity, in that environmental factors are there, and I told you about sunlight, isn't it? So, here you can see in the ocean the primary reason is the light, where if it is not penetrating properly, what will happen? There will be very low productivity. It is being said as light, which is an essential factor in photosynthesis, is a limiting factor as far as its penetration in depth in sea and ocean is concerned. In the ocean and in the sea, how much the light is penetrating into the deep, it depends on the productivity. The light, if it is penetrating properly into the deep ocean and sea, surely the productivity will be more, but it has been said that the penetration of light is becoming a limiting factor there. Therefore, the productivity will be very low. So, that is about productivity, which is the first function of ecosystem. Now, we are moving on to the second function of ecosystem, and that is decomposition. It is the breakdown of complex organic matter into inorganic substances like water, carbon dioxide, etc. by decomposers. Decomposers are microorganisms such as bacteria, fungus, etc. And these decomposers, they will be able to break down the complex substances into simpler form, that is into the inorganic substances like water and carbon dioxide. And what is, for doing decomposition, detritus are needed there, isn't it? And what is detritus? It is the dead remains of plants and animals, and it is forming the raw material for decomposition. If detritus are not there, decomposition process will not be taking place. So, detritus is a main factor for decomposition. And what is detritus? It is the dead remains of plants and animals. It may be leaf, stem, root of plants, or in the case of animals, the remaining or the remains of animals, or the remaining part of the body, or any part of the body, whatever it may be, is the detritus, and it is becoming the raw material for decomposition. Now, what do you mean by detritivores? In the decomposition, we said that decomposition is a process where complex substances is been converted into simpler one with the help of decomposers, and for the decomposition process, detritus are needed there, that is the remains, dead remains of plants and animals. Now, what is detritivores? We can see the organism which break down detritus are called detritivores. Example, earthworm. Earthworm, we used to say it is the farmer's friend, isn't it? It is providing more nutrient to the soil and making the soil more fertile. So, earthworm is one of the example of detritivores. Certain bacteria are also doing that work, isn't it? So, detritivores are the organisms which are able to break down the detritus, and we can see now the steps in decomposition process. This is very, very important again, my dear children. You can see here what is decomposition. It means breaking down. Decomposition means breaking down, and when we discuss it in the term of biology, we usually mean the breaking down of complex organic matter into a simple inorganic matter. Decomposition, that means breaking down. That is the simplest meaning of decomposition. But when we speak in the biological term, it has been said that the complex organic compound will be converted to the simpler inorganic molecules or the matters, isn't it? That is decomposition, and you can see the steps in decomposition. First step is fragmentation, number 2 leaching, number 3 catabolism, number 4 humidification, and number 5 mineralization. So, this order you have to study as such. This used to come in the question paper, the steps in decomposition. It is very, very important, my dear children. Again I repeat, steps in decomposition. The first step is fragmentation, number 2 is leaching, number 3 is catabolism, number 4 is humidification, and number 5 is mineralization. So, one by one we can see each step. Steps of decomposition. Number 1, fragmentation of detritus. It is a process of breakdown of detritus into smaller particles. It is done by detritivores. We know what is detritus. Detritus are the dead remains of plants and animals, and we know what is detritivores. Detritivores are the organisms which are breaking down these detritus. So, what is the first step? Fragmentation. Fragmentation means breaking down of detritus. That is the breakdown of the detritus into smaller pieces is been done with the help of detritivores. That is the first step in decomposition process. Number 2, leaching. So, after fragmentation, leaching is been done. Soluble inorganic nutrients dissolve in water and goes down to soil, get precipitated is called leaching. This is important. What is leaching? It is said that the soluble inorganic nutrients which is available there, it will be moving down into the soil as it dissolves in water, and it will be getting precipitated there. This process is called leaching. And after leaching, catabolism is taking place, that is decomposers such as bacteria, fungi releases enzymes to decompose detritus into simpler organic compounds. So, the decomposers, that is bacteria and fungi, they will start to catabolize, or we can say break down the detritus into simpler inorganic compounds. Next, after catabolism, humidification is taking place, and it is the simplified detritus converted to humus. That is the simplified, that is it has been said that detritus is being converted to simple inorganic compounds, and this simplified detritus is later on converted to humus. And what is humus? Humus is a dark amorphous substance. It is very, very important in the question paper. Related to humus, question used to come. So, what is humus? Dark amorphous substance. It is dark amorphous substance, and it is highly resistant to microbial action. Next one, it undergoes decomposition very slowly. It undergoes decomposition very slowly because it is highly resistant to microbial action. Next one, it has been said it is a reservoir of nutrient, isn't it? Humus is a reservoir of nutrient as it is having a colloidal nature. So, after humidification, mineralization is taking place where humus is degraded to release inorganic substances. The humus which is formed there after catabolic process, that humus will be again breaking down to release inorganic substance such as carbon dioxide, water, etc. and nutrients. So, this is how decomposition process is been taking place, isn't it? Again I will repeat, first fragmentation of detritus is taking place, later on leaching process is taking place, and then the catabolism process is taking place, and later on humification is being taking place, and the humus which is formed through humification process will be undergoing mineralization, so that the inorganic substances as well as nutrients are formed. This is very important, my dear children. You can see the diagrammatic representation of decomposition process. A tree grows in the soil. Later on, from the tree a green leaf falls to the ground. Now what happens? Two steps are there. The first step, it is been said, some are eaten by insects and other animals. Nutrients and energy enter into the food web, and you can see here it is been eaten by insects or other animals, and later on what is happening? Some nutrients reaches into the soil by chemical action, and when the insect or the animal dies, what will happen? It will be mixing with the soil, and the soil is becoming organic rich. Now in the second step we can see here what is happening. The leaves partially consumed by decomposers such as fungus and bacteria, they begin to lose form and become litters. That is, the leaf which has fallen there will be getting decomposed with the help of the bacteria and fungi, and further what is happening? Decomposition by earthworm, bacteria, isn't it, fungus, etc. Next, factors affecting decomposition. Number 1, climatic factor, and number 2, chemical composition. In the case of climatic factors, A, warm and moist environment favor decomposition. That means for the proper functioning or proper process of decomposition, warm and moist environment is needed there. B, low temperature and anaerobiosis. This term is very important, my dear children, and it means lack of oxygen inhibits decomposition. That means if the temperature is low and there is a lack of oxygen, surely decomposition process will not be taking place. So that is about climatic factors. And number 2 is chemical composition. If detritus is rich in lignin and chitin, the decomposition rate becomes very slow. That is, in the dead remains of plants and animals, the cell, if it is rich in lignin and chitin, or we can say the cell wall is rich in lignin and chitin in the case of plant, and the cell which is made up of lignin and chitin in the case of plants, or we can say animals, the decomposition rate becomes very slow. Now, if detritus is rich in nitrogen and water soluble substances like sugar, if the detritus, that is the dead remains of plants and animals, if in them there is rich nitrogen as well as a water soluble substance like sugar, if it is very high, decomposition rate will become quicker as well as high. This is again important, my dear children, you have to study it. Now, till now we have finished the first function of ecosystem, that is productivity, and number 2, decomposition. Now the third function of ecosystem is energy flow. What is energy flow? We can see the solar energy flows through the different biotic components of the ecosystem, and this is called energy flow. Solar energy, when it flows through different biotic components, that flow is called energy flow. Flow of energy is controlled by 2 laws of thermodynamics. Already you would have studied this law of thermodynamics in your chemistry as well as in physics. Here the first law states that energy can neither be created nor destroyed. It can only be transformed from one form to another. Isn't it? The first law is law of conservation of energy. Here it has been said that energy will never be created, it never be destroyed, but it can be transferred, formed from one form to another form. That is, heat energy can be transferred to kinetic energy or mechanical energy or whatever it may be. That transformation energy will be taking place there, but it will not be destroyed, and it is neither been created also. That is the first law of thermodynamics. Now the second law states that whenever energy is transformed from one form of energy to another, there is decrease in the amount of useful energy. That is, when there is a transformation of energy taking place, surely the useful amount of energy will be decreasing in each step. There is a beautiful example related to the decrease of amount of useful energy in the case of food chain, isn't it? In this illustration we can see the first law as well as the second law. It has been said that energy is being transferred from one form to another form, isn't it? You can see here solar energy is there, it is being transferred there, and again to the herbivores, then to the carnivores, the energy is being transferred there. But the amount of useful energy is decreasing in each tropic level. You can see here 1000 joules of light energy which is being provided there by the solar energy to the plants. From the 1000 joules, only 10 joules of energy is available as food for the producers. Remaining 990 joules of energy is lost to the environment. Now, the same way, the 10 joules of energy, when it is being transformed to the next tropic level, that is the herbivore, only 1 joule of energy is available there as food, and the remaining 9 joule of energy is lost to the environment. Again, when 1 joule of energy is again transferred to the next tropic level, that is the carnivores, you can see here 0.9 joule of energy is lost to the environment and only 0.1 joule of energy is available to the carnivores as food. So, this is the first law and the second law of thermodynamics. This illustration is stating about these two laws. My dear children, you have to study it. Now, next thing is been said that flow of energy is unidirectional. In the illustration you can see when the energy from the sun is flowing into the ecosystem, the producers they are trapping it, and from the producers it is being reaching to the herbivores, carnivores, decomposers. But from the decomposers it is not reaching back to the sun, but from each tropic level the energy is being released there as heat and the remaining energy is being utilized there as food. But what is happening there? The energy is not going back to the sun. That is why it has been said that flow of energy is unidirectional, isn't it? Now, you can see here only the visible part of the solar radiation is effective in photosynthesis. We know that in the solar radiation only visible part is there which is very effective for the plants to do photosynthesis, and that visible part of the solar radiation is called photosynthetically active radiation, which is also known as PAR, photosynthetically active radiation. It is very important, my dear children. I think you would have understood about today's session very nicely, and if you are having any doubts related to today's session, you can call me and clarify your doubts. My dear children, by this I am winding the session and we will be meeting in the next session. Till then, take care.